Yo, what's going on YouTube, and welcome back to Goal Line Hockey. It's Kevin Forte, and today we are taking a look at the situation around the Columbus Blue Jackets and Mike Babcock. This one might be really short and sweet, or this one could be a little while, so definitely stay tuned, guys. Buckle in because we have an interesting video for you today. So, unfortunately for the Columbus Blue Jackets the other day, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, the Columbus Blue Jackets former head coach Mike Babcock has resigned, and the whole situation around this, and this is from the Blue Jackets NHL, their Columbus Blue Jackets PR team. So the reason that he decided to leave is basically he thought he would be a distraction to the team, and at the end of the day, all this really is the just basically the lawyeries that Mike Babcock has to play here, because if he admits fault, then that would mean that the Blue Jackets would be off the hook in terms of paying him his salary. He's going to get some kind of payout here for being with the Blue Jackets, but if there's a way that he could avoid just being terminated without pay, the Blue Jackets would try to find that. But the way he said that, as I feel I'm a distraction to the team, he is resigning. That also gives him the opportunity to make some dough. And unfortunately, that's probably not the answer you guys wanted to hear, but that's probably what that's all about. Now, we have to go back further here to get to where the root of this whole thing is. And this starts a long time ago, way before he was in Columbus, before he was in Toronto. To be honest with you, even to an extent back in his time in Detroit. Mike Babcock is a coach that has been well known for pulling off questionable things. We've heard stories and accusations of him, the whole situation around Mitch Marner. He made Marner write down a list of the players that he think were unfit and weren't working out. And Mike Babcock used that against Marner and basically called him out in front of the team and had all the players that knew who he wrote down, which in itself is a disgrace. Then we talk, everyone brings this up, especially the last couple of weeks, the whole Mike Modano thing, right? He was about to hit 1,500 games, and, Mike Babcock scratched him for the final 6 games of the season. In a season they were going to be making the playoffs and going on a run, he made sure to sit him out. Just because there was no real good reason, there was no injury, there was no it was just because he didn't want to play him. Same thing happened with him in Toronto, where Jason Spezza was not allowed to play against the Ottawa Senators toward the end of his career. And, this is the kind of stuff that people notice. And if it happens once or twice, usually that becomes a pattern. And that's been the pattern for Mike Babcock. And it got to the point where the other day, the Blue Jackets said, we have to wipe our hands clean of this before anything else could potentially happen. So you may be asking yourself, I'm sure you guys know what's gone on, especially if you have Twitter or you're living under a rock. Basically what happened is Mike Babcock went around to the team and asked for pictures of everybody, to see their camera roll, basically, seeing who they're, oh, how's your family, who are you hanging out with, sort of things like that. And, I think I was watching Sportsnet, TSN's thing the other day on it, and they brought up a really good point. I think they were I think they're a little jaded in Toronto with Babcock because of the way things ended and things like that, and I totally get that. But Mike Babcock was scrutinized heavily in Toronto. That was one of those markets where maybe he could have been a little more quiet and hid away a little bit in Columbus. Definitely none of that was going to happen in Toronto. Everything would have gotten out. And, they were saying how this is kind of one of those things where maybe with the older players, like, say, a Boone Jenner or Johnny Gaudreau or some of those older defensemen on the team, there was maybe a little bit more buy-in, like, oh, let me see pictures of your family, things like that. That's not super personal. Most of the guys probably have that stuff on their Instagram and Facebook and whatever else. But probably things started to change as he got to the guys lower on the order, the third and fourth line players, the young players that are trying to make this roster out of camp. Those are the guys that Mike Babcock probably got on their horse. Because when asked, a lot of people said, when this whole thing kind of went down, a lot of it, credit to Spit and Chicklets, who is another big podcast. I'm sure you guys have heard of them. They were basically calling out and saying, listen, this stuff is going on. And so many people were giving them shit, which I think is hysterical, because looking back now, those people look kind of dumb. And that's why I waited to make this video, because I wanted to make sure we got more details on this situation, because there was so much happening last week. It was kind of a shitstorm to begin with, and I really wanted to wait for things to settle down, see what actually happened, and thank God we did, because a lot has been happening. And I didn't want to put my thoughts out there before we found out more details. The NHL and the NHLPA did some research. They basically interviewed all the players in the Columbus Blue Jackets organization. They asked them what they thought of the whole situation, because, again, these allegations were taken very seriously by the NHL and the NHLPA, which kudos to the NHLPA, because we've given them a lot of heat over the years. This was one of those moves that gives me some hope that the NHLPA is indeed going in the right direction. Great job by the NHL and the NHLPA. They did their due diligence, they did the work they had to do, and they were able to get to the bottom of this situation, fortunately right before training camp, but in a fairly swift manner. It didn't take them a month or 6 months to figure it out. No. It was a very quick, swift move, and I think everybody's going to be better off for it. So kudos there to the NHL. But during that time, when it was first reported, the NHL, the Columbus Blue Jackets PR was basically, saying none of this stuff is true. Mike Babcock was saying how, this team is not, none of this is going on, and basically discrediting Spit and Chicklets, who had reported these accusations. So that really bothered me, because for the NHL, for the Blue Jackets PR team to get involved in this situation immediately was a huge mistake. And in my opinion, that is a lot of the problem here. And I think that the Blue Jackets, and the other day I listened to the Jarmo Kekalainen and John Davidson press conference, and there was a lot to like about it. They admitted their faults and things like that, but to be honest with you, they knew what they were getting themselves into with Mike Babcock. It wasn't like some big shock to the system when this came out. There's nobody that would have been shocked, and including myself, and I think most other people in the hockey media. If you could say, if there was, pick five coaches around the league that would have done something like this, Mike Babcock's name would absolutely be, if not number one, definitely in that top five. Mike Babcock is the type of guy that unfortunately has had a lot of character issues in his time in the NHL. And I listed off in the beginning of this video some of the things he's done in his career to, let's be honest, good guys. Good guys that are good for the game, the growth of the game, and did not deserve it, in all honesty. Jason Spezza, Mike Modano, Mitch Marner. Those are cornerstone pieces to the NHL during their generation. So for me to sit here and defend Mike Babcock is just disingenuous, because I don't know his character, I don't know him personally, but the actions that are true here speak volumes. And it's one thing if you're able to learn from some of your mistakes. He was never able to do that. And in my opinion, he deserved what happened to him, which is getting terminated and whatever, or resigning, whatever the contract details are of his situation. This was one of those things that, to be honest with you, I think the young players benefit the most. I think the young players there, the Adam Fantillis, the Kent Johnson, Cole Sillingers, even some of those young defensemen, Yegor Chinnikov, even the young goaltender, I think Dania Tarasov, all those guys are going to benefit from Mike Babcock not being there. Because I think those are the guys that were exploited by Babcock in this whole situation. And we live in a different world today. We live in a world where, for the better or for the worse, NHL parents are involved. Yes, for these NHL players making millions of dollars, their parents are involved. And that adds a level of, I think, part of the thing here. I wonder if the Blue Jackets were kind of called, well, the NHLPA maybe got notified from parents of the younger players in Columbus of the situation. And I don't know, I'm not saying that this is what happened, but I'm speculating that that could have been potentially what set this off. And that's where the NHL said, listen, let's be honest, we see things in college football, we see things in the NFL and in MLB, some very scary things that happen behind closed doors. And I think the NHL wanted to avoid a potential really bad situation that could have somehow gotten worse. They had to do what they had to do here. And again, I'm not necessarily anti or for Mike Babcock, but Mike Babcock's pedigree is the reason he got hired in Columbus, and I think it's a sad reminder to everybody in society. Everybody thinks, oh well, he shouldn't get an opportunity, or should or shouldn't, or whatever. The reality is, in life, people should do certain things, but that doesn't mean that that's always going to be where things go. The Columbus Blue Jackets are desperate. This is a group here with John Davidson and Jarmo Kekalainen. They need to get back to the playoffs this year. And desperation sometimes reeks a little bit more. And I think Mike Babcock was the best coach available for the Columbus Blue Jackets. That's who they picked, despite knowing some of the character flaws and some of the off-ice issues that they knew going into this situation. And I hate to say, again, people don't like it, but that's the reality. Sometimes there are bad people that are not nice that get opportunities that maybe the nice person doesn't always get. Because if they're qualified and they are the best at that position, they will get that opportunity over somebody else. And that's the unfortunate reality. I'm not saying that's a good thing or a bad thing. That's just the way it is, and that's just it. When there's people that need to put food on the table, like Jarmo Kekalainen and John Davidson, that was the decision they made. Now, they're also paying for it now. Because now, and I feel really bad, this isn't really fair to the Blue Jackets' next head coach, who was supposed to be an assistant and kind of the good cop in this situation. Now we're going to see Pascal Vincent as the head coach. He announced yesterday, he said, I feel prepared, I feel ready, I feel excited. I mean, there's no way he was really prepared. I mean, there's always that saying out there that you should always be ready for that next role because it could happen tomorrow, it could happen next week, it could happen next month. You always have to be prepared for your potential step up. And we're going to see if that was put to the test here by Pascal Vincent. If he was a passenger for the last couple of years trying to think, oh, I'll just be an assistant and this and that, or is he really ready to be a head coach? Because it's a tough job in Columbus. There's a lot of older players, a lot of younger players, and finding the balance and the right message, that's going to be a really important thing here for Pascal Vincent to start his NHL coaching career. And I'm really excited because that's the opportunity here. And I think this is a really good opportunity for another young coach to get into the game. And some people, listen, I mean, this is what happened a couple years ago to, I forgot his name, the former Blackhawks coach, Joel Quenneville, right? And look what ended up coming from that. Joel Quenneville leaves. Andrew Brunette gets a shot at the NHL as a head coach for a season. Yeah, he didn't end up staying in Florida, but now he's a head coach in Nashville. He got an opportunity to be an assistant in New Jersey this past season. So this could be something, even if it doesn't work out long-term for Pascal Vincent with Columbus, this is another guy that we're going to see a new name in the NHL coaching carousel in a good way. Instead of seeing the same names rotated over and over and over again, this is forcing to see some younger coaches in the game, and I'm all for it. And like I said, another positive here, like I said, I think this is critical for the development of some of these younger players that I said earlier. I think it's critical that they got rid of Mike Babcock. Their development will be better off because of it. Like I said, I don't wish ill will on Mike Babcock. I've never met him, but based off of some of the actions he's done in his career over the past 20, 30 years, it's hard to reason that this is not somebody that maybe isn't the best coach for the NHL anymore. And it's just a guy that's going to go to his lake house, go, relax, go fishing, do whatever he's going to do, but stay away from the NHL. And maybe this is a lesson for other GMs and, departments and things like that, because they're seeing what happened here. We might see this happen less often. And hopefully this is not something we see ever again. But as you guys know, there are bad people in the world. There's bad people in hockey. There's bad people everywhere. And unfortunately, sometimes they get called out. Sometimes they don't. But to wrap a bow on this, this is going to be important for the Blue Jackets season now, because is this going to galvanize everybody or fragment them? And to be honest with you, I think Babcock leaving is actually going to bring a bit of a morale boost to this team. I think this is very similar to the Daryl Sutter situation in Calgary, where everybody was not really liking the vibe there, and everybody was kind of getting called out, and, forgetting to call Jakob Pelletier by his name. He's, saying, oh, who's that guy? That number 72 was good. And not even calling him by his name after his first NHL game. That's the kind of stuff that's not going to happen anymore. Unfortunately, though, enough coaches have to go through the blunder. Enough players have to get, unfortunately, tormented in order to have that happen. But, like I said, the more we see this happen, I think the better off long term it will be for the NHL and for just sports in general. So, guys, that's it for today's video. Let me know what you think down below of the Columbus Blue Jackets letting go of Mike Babcock. This did end up being a pretty long video, but hopefully you guys got some good information out of it. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, as we are now getting into training camp, going into the preseason here, as we are now in the end of September, going into October. Hockey season is right around the corner, so it's definitely very exciting. I'm definitely excited to have more content for you guys as we get ready for this season. Guys, as always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.